My best friend asked to borrow my truck while his was in the shop. A week later, I got a ticket in the mail for a hit and run I had nothing to do with. When I called him, he said, "You're a good guy. You'll figure it out." When my best friend Derek called me on a Tuesday morning asking if he could borrow my truck while his was getting transmission work done, I did not hesitate to say yes. We had been friends since middle school and had always helped each other out during tough situations. He needed reliable transportation to get to work for the rest of the week, and I had been planning to work from home anyway. Lending him my Ford F-150 seemed like an easy favor for someone who had been there for me countless times over the years. Derek had borrowed my truck before for moving furniture and hauling supplies for home improvement projects, so this request was not unusual. He was always careful with my vehicle and returned it in the same condition he received it, usually with a full tank of gas as a thank you gesture. I trusted him completely with my most valuable possession after my house and never worried about anything happening when he was driving it. The arrangement was supposed to last 3 days while his Toyota Tacoma was at Peterson Auto Repair getting a new transmission installed. Derek picked up my truck Wednesday morning and promised to have it back by Friday evening once his vehicle was ready. He seemed genuinely grateful for the help and assured me he would take excellent care of it, just like he always had in the past. Friday came and went without Derek returning my truck, but when I texted him about it, he explained that Peterson Auto had run into complications with his transmission repair and needed to order additional parts. He asked if he could keep my truck through the weekend and promised to return it Monday morning once his Tacoma was finally fixed. Since I did not have any weekend plans that required driving, I agreed to extend the arrangement. Monday morning, Derek called to say there were still delays with his truck repair and asked if he could keep mine for a few more days. This was starting to become inconvenient since I had planned to drive to visit my parents that weekend, but I agreed to help him out because that is what friends do for each other. He sounded stressed about his work situation and transportation challenges, so I wanted to be supportive during what seemed like a difficult time. By Wednesday of the following week, I was getting frustrated with the extended borrowing period and texted Derek asking for a specific timeline for when I could get my truck back. He responded that his Tacoma should be ready Thursday, and he would return my F-150 that evening. I was relieved to finally have an end date for the arrangement since I was starting to feel like I did not have access to my own vehicle. Thursday evening, Derek brought my truck back as promised, and everything seemed normal when he handed over the keys. The exterior looked clean and undamaged, and he mentioned that he had filled up the gas tank before returning it. He thanked me repeatedly for helping him out during a stressful week and promised he would do the same for me if I ever needed transportation assistance. I did not think anything more about the situation until the following Tuesday when I found an official-looking envelope in my mailbox from the Metro Police Department. Inside was a citation for leaving the scene of an accident that had allegedly occurred the previous Friday afternoon at the intersection of Maple Street and 3rd Avenue. According to the ticket, my truck had been involved in a collision with a pedestrian who suffered minor injuries, and the driver had fled the scene without stopping to exchange information or render aid. The citation included a date and time stamp showing the incident had occurred at 2:47 p.m. on Friday, which was during the period when Derek was borrowing my truck. There were also photographs taken by traffic cameras showing my distinctive blue F-150 with its easily recognizable dent in the passenger side door that I had never bothered to repair after backing into a pole 2 years earlier. My hands were shaking as I read through the details of the accident and the potential penalties I was facing. Leaving the scene of an accident involving injury was a serious misdemeanor that could result in license suspension, hefty fines, and even possible jail time, depending on the circumstances. The fine alone was $1,500, which was money I definitely did not have readily available. I immediately called Derek to ask if he knew anything about an accident involving my truck the previous Friday afternoon. When he answered the phone, his voice sounded different somehow, more guarded and less friendly than usual. I explained about receiving the citation and asked if he remembered being near the intersection of Maple and 3rd Avenue around the time the incident allegedly occurred. Derek was quiet for a long moment before responding in a tone that chilled me to the bone. He said he vaguely remembered driving through that area, but had not been involved in any accident that he was aware of. When I pressed him for more details about his activities that Friday, he became defensive and claimed he could not remember every specific location he had driven to during the week he was borrowing my truck. I explained the seriousness of the situation and the potential consequences I was facing, including license suspension and criminal charges. I told Derek that the traffic camera photos clearly showed my truck at the scene and that I needed his help to figure out what had actually happened so we could resolve the situation appropriately. That is when Derek said the words that would end our friendship forever. In a casual, almost dismissive tone, he told me, "You're a good guy. You'll figure it out." He suggested that maybe I should just pay the fine and move on rather than making a big deal out of what was probably just a misunderstanding or administrative error. I was stunned by his response and asked him directly if he had been involved in the hit-and-run incident. Derek denied any knowledge of an accident, but his tone was unconvincing and he seemed eager to end the conversation. When I insisted that we needed to discuss the situation further, he claimed he was busy at work and would call me back later, but that call never came. Over the next few days, I tried repeatedly to reach Derek by phone, text, and even stopping by his apartment, but he was avoiding me completely. His work colleagues told me he had called in sick when I tried to find him at his job site, and his neighbors said they had not seen him around his building. It became clear that Derek was deliberately hiding from me rather than helping to resolve the situation he had created. I spent that weekend researching my legal options and trying to understand the process for disputing traffic citations. I learned that I could request a court hearing to contest the charges, but would need evidence to prove that I was not the person driving my truck at the time of the incident. The burden of proof would be on me to demonstrate that someone else was responsible for the hit and run. Monday morning, I called Peterson Auto Repair to verify Derek's story about his transmission work and get documentation that could help establish a timeline for when he was using my truck. The service manager confirmed that Derek's Toyota Tacoma had been in their shop from Wednesday through the following Thursday, but could not provide specific details about Derek's daily activities during that period. I also contacted my insurance company to report the citation and seek guidance about how it might affect my policy. The claims representative explained that hit-and-run incidents typically resulted in significant premium increases and could potentially lead to policy cancellation depending on the circumstances and my driving history. Most importantly, I hired a traffic attorney named Jennifer Walsh who specialized in helping people contest moving violations and criminal traffic charges. Jennifer reviewed the citation and traffic camera evidence and explained that while the case against me appeared strong based on the vehicle identification, there might be legal avenues to explore if I could prove someone else was driving with my permission. Jennifer advised me to gather as much documentation as possible about Derek's borrowing arrangement, including text messages, phone records, and any witnesses who could verify that he had been using my truck during the time period in question. She also suggested filing a police report about the unauthorized use of my vehicle, even though I had given Derek permission to drive it. The police report was complicated because I had voluntarily loaned Derek my truck, but the officer who took my statement explained that Derek's failure to report an accident while driving my vehicle could constitute a form of fraud or theft by deception. The report would create an official record of my claim that someone else was responsible for the hit-and-run incident. I spent hours compiling evidence for my defense, including text message conversations with Derek about borrowing the truck, phone records showing the timing of our communications, and statements from family members who knew about the lending arrangement. I also took photographs of the current condition of my truck to document any damage that might be related to the incident. The most challenging part of building my defense was Derek's continued refusal to cooperate or communicate with me about what had happened. His silence was essentially an admission of guilt, but without his testimony or confession, it would be difficult to prove in court that he was the actual driver during the hit-and-run incident. Jennifer filed a motion requesting access to additional traffic camera footage from the area surrounding the accident scene in hopes of capturing clearer images of the driver or other evidence that could support my case. She also subpoenaed Derek's phone records to establish his location at the time of the incident, although this process would take several weeks to complete. While waiting for the legal process to unfold, I had to deal with the immediate practical consequences of the citation. My auto insurance company increased my premiums by 40% based on the pending charges, and I received notification that my driver's license would be suspended if I was found guilty of the hit-and-run offense. More frustrating was the impact on my personal relationships and reputation. Word of the citation had spread through our social circle, and some mutual friends were asking questions about what had happened. I found myself in the uncomfortable position of having to explain that my best friend had apparently committed a crime while driving my truck and was now refusing to take responsibility for his actions. The court date for my citation was scheduled for 6 weeks after I received the ticket, which gave Jennifer time to prepare a comprehensive defense strategy. During this period, I continued trying to reach Derek through mutual friends and family members, but he had effectively disappeared from his normal social activities and was avoiding anyone who might pressure him to discuss the situation. 3 weeks before my court date, I received an unexpected phone call from Derek's younger sister Amanda, who had heard about the situation through family gossip. Amanda told me she was disgusted by her brother's behavior and wanted to help me prove that Derek had been responsible for the hit-and-run incident. According to Amanda, Derek had confided in her about being involved in an accident while driving my truck, but had sworn her to secrecy because he was afraid of the legal and financial consequences. She said Derek had told her he panicked after hitting the pedestrian and drove away without stopping because he did not have valid insurance and was worried about being arrested. Amanda was willing to testify about Derek's confession, but was concerned about the impact on her family relationships and potential legal consequences for herself. Jennifer assured her that witness testimony about statements made by the defendant would be admissible in court and that she would not face any criminal liability for reporting what Derek had told her. Armed with Amanda's testimony and the other evidence we had compiled, Jennifer felt confident that we could successfully defend against the hit-and-run charges. However, she warned me that Derek would likely face serious criminal charges once the truth came out, and that our friendship would obviously be permanently damaged by his betrayal and deception. The court hearing took place on a Thursday morning in downtown traffic court, with Judge Harrison presiding over a packed courtroom full of people contesting various moving violations. When my case was called, Jennifer presented our defense systematically, starting with documentation of the truck lending arrangement and building toward Amanda's testimony about Derek's confession. The prosecutor seemed surprised by the complexity of our defense, since most hit-and-run cases involved defendants who simply denied being at the scene or claimed the charges were cases of mistaken identity. Jennifer's argument that my truck had been driven by someone else with permission created a more nuanced legal situation that required careful consideration of the evidence. Amanda's testimony was particularly compelling because she had no apparent motive to lie about her brother's confession, and her emotional distress while recounting the conversation seemed genuine. She explained that Derek had told her he was driving my truck when he struck a pedestrian who had stepped into the crosswalk, and that he had panicked and driven away without stopping. The judge questioned Amanda extensively about the details of Derek's confession and the timing of their conversation. She consistently maintained that Derek had admitted responsibility for the accident and had expressed guilt about letting me take the blame for something he had done while driving my vehicle. After reviewing all the evidence and hearing testimony from both sides, Judge Harrison ruled that there was reasonable doubt about whether I had been the driver during the hit-and-run incident. He dismissed the charges against me, but noted that the evidence suggested a crime had been committed and that the appropriate authorities should investigate Derek's role in the incident. Following the dismissal of charges against me, the prosecutor's office opened a criminal investigation into Derek's involvement in the hit-and-run incident. Based on Amanda's testimony and the evidence we had presented, they filed charges against Derek for leaving the scene of an accident involving injury and for filing a false police report by allowing me to be charged for his crime. Derek was arrested at his workplace 2 days after my court hearing and faced significantly more serious consequences than the original citation I had received. Because he had allowed someone else to be charged for his crime, the penalties were enhanced, and he was looking at possible jail time in addition to fines and license suspension. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness when I learned about Derek's arrest. While I was grateful that justice had been served and my name had been cleared, I was also disappointed by how completely our friendship had been destroyed by his selfish decision to let me take responsibility for his mistakes. The aftermath of Derek's arrest revealed additional information about his character that made me question how well I had actually known him despite our long friendship. According to Amanda, Derek had a history of avoiding responsibility for his mistakes and manipulating other people into helping him deal with the consequences of his poor decisions. Derek's legal troubles extended beyond the hit-and-run incident when investigators discovered he had been driving without valid insurance for several months and had lied on job applications about his driving record. The accumulation of charges and violations resulted in a lengthy license suspension and significant financial penalties that he struggled to pay. Most importantly for my situation, Derek's confession and guilty plea meant that my auto insurance company reversed their premium increase and removed the incident from my driving record. My insurance rates returned to their previous levels, and I received a formal apology from the company for the inconvenience caused by their initial response to the citation. The resolution of the legal case also restored my reputation within our social circle as word spread that Derek had been responsible for the hit and run and had deliberately tried to let me take the blame. Several mutual friends reached out to express their support and their shock at Derek's behavior during the crisis. Jennifer's invoice for her legal services was substantial, but I considered it money well spent given the serious consequences I had avoided by successfully defending against the charges. The cost of hiring an attorney was significantly less than the fines, license suspension, and insurance penalties I would have faced if Derek's deception had been successful. More valuable than the financial savings was the lesson I learned about the importance of standing up for myself when facing false accusations rather than simply accepting blame for things I had not done. Without Jennifer's guidance and Amanda's courage to come forward, Derek's plan to escape accountability might have succeeded. The experience taught me to be more careful about lending valuable possessions to other people, even close friends and family members who I trusted completely. While I still believe in helping others during difficult times, I now understand the importance of documenting such arrangements and considering potential legal implications. Derek attempted to contact me several times after his arrest to apologize and ask for forgiveness, but I had no interest in rebuilding a relationship with someone who had proven willing to destroy my life to avoid taking responsibility for his own mistakes. Trust, once broken that completely, cannot be easily repaired regardless of family history or previous friendship. 6 months after the incident, I learned through mutual acquaintances that Derek had moved to another state after completing his legal obligations and paying his fines. He apparently struggled to find employment in our area due to his criminal record and the damage to his reputation from the hit-and-run case and subsequent investigation. Meanwhile, my own life returned to normal relatively quickly once the legal issues were resolved and my driving record was cleared. The experience had been stressful and expensive, but it also demonstrated the value of having good legal representation and supportive friends who were willing to help during a crisis. The relationship with Amanda actually grew stronger as a result of her decision to testify on my behalf despite the potential impact on her family relationships. Her willingness to do the right thing, even when it was difficult and costly, showed a level of character that I had not always appreciated during our previous casual interactions. Looking back, the most infuriating aspect of the entire situation was Derek's casual dismissal of my concerns when I first called him about the citation. His attitude that I was a good guy who would figure out how to handle his mess revealed a level of selfishness and entitlement that I had never recognized during our years of friendship. The experience also highlighted the importance of traffic cameras and electronic surveillance in modern law enforcement. Without the photographic evidence of my truck at the accident scene, Derek might have been able to deny involvement completely, but the camera footage made it impossible for him to claim the incident had never occurred. More broadly, the incident taught me valuable lessons about personal responsibility and the consequences of trying to avoid accountability for mistakes and poor decisions. Derek's attempt to escape responsibility ultimately resulted in much more serious legal and personal consequences than he would have faced by simply reporting the accident immediately. The hit-and-run case became a cautionary tale within our social circle about the importance of maintaining proper insurance coverage and reporting accidents promptly rather than trying to avoid dealing with the consequences. Several friends mentioned that Derek's situation had motivated them to review their own insurance policies and driving habits. Today, I am more selective about who I trust with my personal property and more careful about documenting any lending arrangements, even with close friends and family members. While I still believe in helping others during emergencies, I now understand that good intentions are not enough to protect against betrayal and deception. The Derek incident also reinforced my appreciation for the legal system and the importance of having access to competent legal representation when facing serious charges. Without Jennifer's expertise and aggressive defense strategy, I might have been convicted of a crime I did not commit, with lasting consequences for my driving record and reputation. Most importantly, the experience taught me that true friendship is revealed during times of crisis, and that people who are willing to let others suffer for their mistakes are not worthy of trust or loyalty regardless of the history of the relationship. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can learn about someone is who they really are when facing pressure and accountability. The $1,500 fine that I had initially faced for Derek's hit and run would have been financially devastating at the time, but the real cost of his betrayal was the destruction of a friendship that had lasted over 15 years. In the end, Derek saved himself some money and legal trouble in the short term, but lost relationships and reputation that were far more valuable than the consequences he was trying to avoid. While I was disappointed by how the situation unfolded, I was also grateful that Derek's true character was revealed before I made any major life decisions that involved depending on his integrity or loyalty. Better to learn these lessons about someone during a relatively minor crisis than during a major life event when the stakes would have been much higher.